Linnaeus was born on May 23, 1707. He was a Swedish scientist who laid the foundations of modern taxonomy, the science of identifying, naming and classifying organisms. The great Swedish biologist, Carl von Linné, was born in a small village. He comes from a family of farmers and priests. His passion for nature was evident from his childhood. In those days, it was usual for a man who studied to become a clergyman to exchange his surname for something more refined.
The new one could be the name of his village or home farm, but in a Latin form.
So, when Linnaeus' father set out to study theology, he took the name of the linden tree, which grew on the family farm, but in its Swedish form, Lindlin.
When Carl enrolled at Lund University, he chose the Latin form of his name, Linnaeus, and became Carolus Linnaeus.
That was common practice for students in Europe.
He was popular with his interesting lectures. He asked his students to bring various specimens to study and describe. But he gained in popularity, mostly with his nature trips.
The story goes that on one such a trip, he met a donkey. It bared its teeth at him. He said, "If I knew how many teeth every single species has, I could sort them out into groups."
In 1732, Linnaeus was awarded funding for a long-planned journey to Lapland. In the harsh northern land, he traveled about 2,000 kilometers.
He discovered over 100 species of plants, unknown to science, collected samples of minerals, observed, and described birds. In 1735, with the support of various scientists, who estimated highly his ideas, Carl Linnaeus published the famous pamphlet, Systema Naturae, one of his major works.
It contains 12 pages. It was the first edition of his classification of life forms.
Carl Linnaeus was one of the first to describe, arrange, and give scientific names of the living things. He grouped known species in 3 kingdoms.
The system, this is Ariadne's thread in botany. Without it, everything becomes chaos, wrote Carl Linnaeus.
Animals, for instance, he represented on 2 pages, in 6 columns, each one named after one of Linnaeus' classes.
Besides these 6 classes, Linnaeus set off half a column for the so-called paradoxes, which included mythical animals like the unicorn, the griffin, the phoenix, the dragon, etc. The classification system of Linnaeus, of animal and plant kingdom, is still used today. Grouping is made up of units, called taxon. The grouping of organisms is based on these common features and differences. Each subsequent taxon of species has a larger volume than the previous one. Carl Linnaeus designed a system of naming organisms, called binomial, which gave each one 2 names, genus and species.
For example, mountain lion, cougar, and puma are all common names for the same animal. The name you decide to use probably depends on where you live.
Carl Linnaeus was the first person to place humans in the primate family, and to describe bats as mammals rather than birds.
Simple classification of complex animal, man. Phylum Chordata, subtype Cranial, class Mammalia, order Primata, suborder Higher monkeys, family Hominid, genus Homo species, Homo sapiens. Today, living organisms on Earth are about 2.5 million, in 5 kingdoms. The system of Linnaeus was developed and complemented by modern systematics.
Not only is Linnaeus considered the father of taxonomy, he was also a pioneer in the study of ecology.
He was one of the first to describe relationships between living things and their environments.
If a tree dies, plant another in its place, wrote Carolus Linnaeus.